Hi to my favorite third graders. I know we are all working super hard at home, and I know that this wasn't ideal and what we really wanted, but it is what it is, and I'm sure that everybody's working hard. And the great thing is, there's no chatting. I don't have to wait for anybody to stop talking because it's just me and my Wayside School book. So I'm going to read chapters 10 through 12 to you. And then we have some questions for you at the end, but they're always fun because we like to read those. So what I'm hoping is we'll do 10 through 12, and then I'll record and we'll do 13 through 15, but we'll just have fun with it like we have been. So here we go with chapter 10, music. Benjamin still hadn't told anybody he wasn't Mark Miller. His grades had never been better. Mark Miller is a lot smarter than Benjamin Nushmut, he thought. When they choose teams for kickball, he was always the first one to be picked. Mark Miller is a better kicker than Benjamin Nushmut, he realized. The girls in class liked him too. Mark Miller is better looking than Benjamin Nushmut, he decided. But unfortunately, he knew he had to tell Mrs. Jules his real name. He sighed, then slowly raised his hand. Mrs. Jules gave him a tambourine. He had been so busy thinking about his problem, he hadn't noticed that Mrs. Jules was passing out musical instruments. She had just asked, "Who would like the tambourine?" So when he raised his hand, she gave it to him. "Who would like the triangle?" asked Mrs. Jules. Joe raised his hand, and Mrs. Jules gave it to him. "Why is it called a triangle?" asked Joe. "I don't know," said Mrs. Jules. "Maybe because it's shaped like a triangle." "Then that can't be," said Mrs. Jules. "Then the tambourine would have to be called a circle." "Maybe it was invented by a person named Joe Triangle," said Rondi. "That's probably it," said Mrs. Jules. She held up the next instrument. It was a glockenspiel. "Who would like the glockenspiel?" she asked. Sherry raised her hand. Nobody asked why it was called a glockenspiel. It was obvious. Mrs. Jules gave the bells to Stephen. "Why are they called bells?" he asked. Nobody knew. Joe got the bongo drums. Todd got the bass drum. Jenny snared the snare drum. And Leslie got the kettle drum. They banged on them. It hurt everyone else's eardrums when they did. Mrs. Jules gave one cymbal to Calvin and the other cymbal to Bebe. DJ got the gong, and the three Erics got the kazoos. Mrs. Jules shouted, "Uno, dos, tres, cuatro." The children all played their instruments. They shook, rattled, rocked, and rolled. Joy bonged on her bongs. DJ gonged on his gong. Sherry glockened on her glockenspiel. Stephen jingled his bells. Calvin and Bebe slapped their cymbals together, and Joe's triangle went ting. But something didn't sound right. "What's wrong, Mark?" Mrs. Jules shouted over the music. "Why aren't you playing your tambourine?" "My name's not Mark," said Benjamin. "It's Benjamin Nushmut. I'm sorry for not telling you before." "What?" asked Mrs. Jules. "I can't hear you." "My name isn't Mark," he said. "It's Benjamin." "Louder," said Mrs. Jules. So everyone played louder. Todd bashed his bass drum. Leslie cooked her kettle drum. Calvin and Bebe crashed their cymbals together. And Joe's triangle went ting. "My name is Benjamin," shouted Benjamin. Mrs. Jules put her hand to her ear. "Louder," she said. So everyone played louder. DJ gabonged his gong. Joy chagonged her bongos. Paul spackled his castanets. Jenny spaghettied her snare drum. Calvin and Bebe whammered their cymbals, and Joe's triangle went ting. "My name's Benjamin Nushmut," hollered Benjamin Nushmut. "Louder," said Mrs. Jules. So everyone played louder. The three Erics screamed in their kazoos. Calvin and Bebe ran to opposite sides of the room with their cymbals. Then they charged toward each other. Suddenly the door flew open, and a man entered. Benjamin had never seen him before. The whole class became very quiet. It was Mr. Kidswater, the principal. Calvin and Bebe screeched to a halt just in time. Their cymbals were less than an inch apart. "Is something the matter, Mr. Kidswater?" asked Mrs. Jules. "Several teachers have complained about your music," said Mr. Kidswater. "Their students are having trouble hearing." "I understand," said Mrs. Jules. "Good," said Mr. Kidswater, and he walked out of the room. "Okay." "You heard Mr. Kidswater," said Mrs. Jules. "We'll have to play louder so everyone can hear." Uno, dos, tres, cuatro. They shook, rattled, rocked, and rolled. Benjamin frampled his tambourine. "Excellent, Mark," shouted Mrs. Jules. He smiled. He had never played so well before. Mark Miller is a better musician than Benjamin Nushmut, he thought. So do we think that Mr. Kidswater wanted them to play louder, or they couldn't hear because they were playing too loud? I guess it's a matter of perception, right? What do you think? All right, chapter 11, Kathy and DJ. Down on the playground, Kathy was singing her favorite song. Wayside School is falling down. Wayside School is falling down. Wayside School is falling down, my fair lady. Kids go splat as they hit the ground. Hit the ground, hit the ground. Kids go splat as they hit the ground, my fair lady. DJ was walking across the playground with his head down. Hi, Dr. Jolly, said Lewis. Lewis called DJ Dr. Jolly because he was always smiling. But now DJ's smile seemed upside down. He looked up at Lewis. Lewis had never seen such a sad face. What's wrong? He asked. DJ just shook his head. Then he looked back down at the ground and sadly walked away. Lewis felt like crying. Hey, Lewis, what's wrong with DJ? Asked Ron. He's so sad, said Dee Dee. I don't know, said Lewis, shaking his head. Hey, do you guys want to play kickball? No thanks, said Dee Dee. I can't have fun when DJ is unhappy. Me either, said Ron. Across the playground, all the children quit their games when they saw DJ. Nobody could have fun when DJ looked so sad. Except Kathy. She sang, broken bones and blood and gore, blood and gore, blood and gore, broken bones and blood and gore, my fair lady. We don't have school no more, school no more, school no more. We don't have school no more, my fair lady. How fitting. Luckily, no broken bones or blood. The bell rang. DJ sadly looked up at the school inside. Hey, Deej, snap out of it, said Myron. DJ stared at his friend. You want me to walk up the stairs with us, Dojo? Asked Damien. DJ shook his head. I need to be alone, he mumbled. Damien and Myron looked at each other, then started up the stairs, leaving their sad friend behind. DJ headed up. He stopped halfway between the 9th and the 10th floors and sat down. He lowered his face into his hands, and he cried. A moment later, someone burst out laughing. DJ opened his eyes and saw Kathy standing over him. You shouldn't sit on the stairs, you dumb jerk, Kathy said with a glee. I almost kicked you in the head. Kathy always called DJ dumb jerk. She didn't like DJ because he was always smiling. Now she was glad to see him so sad. Hi, Kathy, said DJ. She plopped down on the stair next to him. What happened? She asked. Did your dog die? She laughed. DJ shook his head. Are your parents getting divorced? She asked. Hopefully. Did your house burn down? No, said DJ. My great-grandfather gave me a gold watch. It was over 100 years old. I brought it to school today and... You lost it? Exclaimed Kathy with delight. DJ sadly nodded. Kathy laughed. Oh boy, are you going to get into trouble? She rubbed her hands together. Your parents will ground you forever. No, my parents never punish me, DJ said. They know I learn from my mistakes. Oh, Kathy said, a little disappointed. But your great-grandfather will hate you. He'll never give you another present for the rest of your life, not even for your birthday. No, he loves me no matter what I do, said DJ. He likes people, not things. Again, Kathy was disappointed. But the watch was worth a lot of money, she tried, and you'll have to pay for it out of your allowance. She laughed triumphantly. Sure, she'd gotten him this time. I don't get an allowance, said DJ. I don't even like money. Kathy frowned. Still, she knew there had to be some reason why he was so sad about losing the watch. You'll never know what time it is, she squawked. So, asked DJ, time isn't real. Kathy didn't know what DJ meant by all of that, but she didn't care. Well, if you don't know what time it is, she said, you'll miss all of your favorite television shows. I don't have a favorite television show, said DJ. I never watch television. He thought for a moment. I'm not sure if we have a TV in our house or not. Maybe there's one in the closet somewhere. Kathy glared at him. Well, how come you're so sad you lost the dumb watch? She demanded. I'm afraid a bird might think it's food and choke on it, said DJ. Is that all? Shrieked Kathy. DJ smiled. I guess you're right, he said. A bird probably won't choke. In fact, he could use it to make a nest. I hope so, don't you? He hopped to his feet. Thanks for talking to me, Kathy. I feel a lot better now. You're a good friend. He hurried up to Mrs. Jewell's room, taking the stairs 2 and 3 at a time. As DJ Smiles turned up, Kathy's smile turned down. She followed after him, grumbling to herself. He doesn't even like money. He doesn't worry about time. He never watches television. Why is he always so happy? Everyone in Mrs. Jewell's class cheered when they saw DJ enter the room. Kathy walked in behind, frowning. Mrs. Jewell was getting ready to show a movie. She gave DJ a piece of black construction paper. "Hey, look!" exclaimed Myron. "Oddly, found a watch." Oddly, the bird dropped the watch on the windowsill. Kathy couldn't believe it. "It's DJ's," she griped. Myron gave DJ the watch. "Here you go. You can have it, Kathy," said DJ with a big smile. "It's worth a lot of money, and this way you won't miss any of your favorite television shows." Kathy took the watch from him and put it on her wrist. "It'll probably make my skin turn green," she groused. Mrs. Jewell stared at the movie projector. Stephen turned off the lights. Damien pulled down the shades. DJ held a piece of black construction paper under his nose because his smile was so bright. That was a great little story there about time and not being so concerned over time, and definitely not money or television shows. All right, so chapter 12, we will read that, and then we have a little bit of assignments, but it's still just the fun Wayside School books. All right, so chapter 12 is pencils. Jason borrowed a pencil from Allison. When he gave it back to her, it was full of teeth marks. Allison held the pencil by its point. "Yuck," she said. "You chewed on it." Jason felt awful. It was very embarrassing to borrow somebody's pencil and then chew on it. "Sorry," he said. "I didn't do it on purpose." "You can keep it," said Allison. She dropped the pencil on Jason's desk, then raised her hand. "Mrs. Jewell, can I go to the bathroom? I have to wash my hands. Jason slobbered all over my pencil." Everybody laughed. Jason turned red. "I'm sorry, Allison," he said. "I know it's a disgusting habit, but I just can't help it." "Don't let Jason touch any of my books," said Allison as she headed out of the room. "He might eat them." Everyone laughed again. "Here, you can eat my book, Jason," said Todd. "I don't like it anyway." Mrs. Jewell made Todd write his name on the blackboard under the word discipline. Jason was so mad at himself, he broke the chewed-up pencils to bits. That wasn't a smart thing to do. "Everyone take out a pencil and a piece of paper," said Mrs. Jewell. "It's time for our spelling test." Jason slapped himself on the forehead. "I'm so stupid," he thought. "Rondi, may I borrow a pencil, please?" he asked. Rondi made a face. "All of my pencils are new," she said. "How do I know you won't eat it?" "I won't," said Jason. "I promise." "You better not," said Rondi. She gave him one of her pencils. It was new and freshly sharpened. Jason liked the way it smelled. "The first word is orchestra," said Mrs. Jewell. Jason tried to remember how to spell orchestra. He stuck the back of the pencil in his mouth. Second word, garbanzo. Jason chewed on the eraser. When the spelling test was over, Ronnie's pencil was worse than Allison's. Jason looked at it in horror. He didn't even remember chewing it. "Oh no," he thought. "What am I going to do?" He stuck it inside his desk. "Jason, may I have my pencil back, please?" said Rondi. "What pencil?" asked Jason. "The one I lent you," said Rondi. Jason opened his desk and pretended to look at it. "I don't know where it is," he said. "Mrs. Jewell, Jason stole my pencil," said Rondi. "Jason, give Rondi her pencil back," said Mrs. Jewell. He gave it to her. "You chewed on it," exclaimed Rondi. Everyone laughed. "No, I didn't. Those are just teeth marks." "How can they be teeth marks?" asked Rondi. She smiled. She was missing her 2 front teeth. "Oh, how can they be my teeth marks?" asked Rondi. She smiled. She was missing her 2 front teeth. "So," said Jason, "you don't chew on pencils with your front teeth. You chew on them with your back teeth." "How do you know?" asked Rondi. Said Jason. Mrs. Jewell made Jason write his name under the board under the word discipline, because he chewed on Rondi's pencil, then lied about it. "And try not to eat the chalk," she said. Everyone laughed. Rondi threw the chewed-up pencil out the window. It hit Lewis on the head. Mrs. Jewell gave Damien a stack of worksheets and asked him to pass them out. They contained arithmetic problems. Jason had to borrow another pencil. "Allison, may I borrow another pencil, please?" he asked. "Eat my socks," said Allison. That wasn't such a bad idea, Jason realized. If he stuffed a sock in his mouth, he wouldn't be able to chew a pencil. Myron looked at his worksheet. I don't feel like doing this stuff, he said. Here, Jason, you can have my pencil. Thanks, Myron, said Jason. I promise not to chew it. He'd hoped he'd be able to keep his promise. He thought about asking Mrs. Jules for a Tootsie Roll Pop. If I'm sucking on that, I won't chew on Myron's pencil. And a Tootsie Roll Pop would probably taste better than Allison's socks. He didn't know for sure because he had never tasted Allison's socks. But before he could ask Mrs. Jules called him. Jason, will you come here for a moment? She said. I think I know how to keep you from chewing pencils. Jason smiled as he walked to her desk. I like the purple ones, he told her. But Mrs. Jules didn't give him a Tootsie Roll Pop. Instead, she taped his mouth shut with heavy-duty masking tape. She had to use a lot of tape because Jason had the second biggest mouth in all of the class. There, she said. Jason started back to his seat. Aren't you even going to say thank you? Said Mrs. Jules. Mm-hmm, said Jason. You're welcome, said Mrs. Jules. Hey, Jason, teased Allison, you look like a mummy. Don't sneeze, said Rondi. You'll blow your head off. They both laughed. Jason said back to them. It was a very bad thing to say, and he wasn't supposed to use words like that. You'd better not pull that tape off, said Rondi. You might rip off your lips. They both laughed again. Jason had never been more embarrassed in his whole life. His ears burned as he set to work with all of his arithmetic problems. They were tough problems. Several times the pencil crashed against the tape, but the tape held firm. Mrs. Jules was very proud of herself. Not only did the tape protect Myron's pencil, but Mrs. Jules also noticed that Jason was quieter than he'd ever been. I should tape all of their mouths shut, she thought. Then they'd be nice and quiet. It was such a good idea. She wondered why no other teacher had ever thought of it. We have a long time to think. Hopefully we don't think about that, right? Anyway, third grade, you know we would never do that to you. Keep working hard, getting all your work done. Get outside and enjoy the beautiful weather that we're going to have. We miss you and we cannot wait to get back to school. Have a great weekend.